And then, so let's get these like higher if right there. All right, we got a couple people joined in on Instagram. Hello, everyone. Feel free to jump in with your questions. Got quite a few planned. Just getting a little bit this way. Bring this forward a little bit, like that.
This, right?
Huh?
I'm in charge of this.
Yes. Do you have a pen?
I do.
All right, a few people joining on TikTok as well. All right. I had the. All right. Anyone want to jump in with a question? And cameraman, if you want to put tape down while I'm talking, you can, or direct me. And if you want to take a look into the cameras and adjust them as well, I think they can both be brought like this a little bit. I think a little bit high up in the screen for both of them here. I'll get that to the top of that.
Yeah. Let me get you good.
Was that just right in the middle of me?
Yep.
Okay, that's fair.
And this one, there's going to be a delay.
There is.
Is this one Instagram?
That's Instagram.
This one is Instagram. I feel like. Look.
This is Instagram.
I'm looking at him right there.
Okay. Let's see. The camera point of view is from this camera.
It's not though. It's because it's reversed.
Okay.
Sorry. And then here's TikTok. Let's get this.
Need to be closer.
That's pretty.
All right. Anyone want to jump in with a question?
I have a question. When choosing a trust company to work with, it's like choosing your financial ally, right? Can you discuss a little bit on the importance of choosing a good trust company?
So the question is, can I discuss the importance of choosing a good trust company? And yes, it's very important to choose a good trust company. There are lots of trust companies. Most of them I've worked with are pretty good. Not all of them, but you want somebody who has a good reputation, who's been in the business for a while, who manages a lot of money, and who is responsive. You are dealing with people from another country, and you want to make sure that you have a lot of confidence in who you're working with, and somebody who is responsive and has a good reputation and has worked extensively with the attorney who you work with. That is very important. There's good domestic trust companies, there's good offshore trust companies, and there's bad ones of both as well. So vetting a proper trust company is very important. But if you vet the right if you do have the right if you do have a good trust company, it makes the process very smooth, actually.
Okay.
You have questions over there?
All right, so we got someone else who jumped in with a question. You remind me of my old boss I worked with before I started my own practice. He does offshore trust too. Okay, sounds good. Thanks for that insight.
There was a real question.
Was there a real question there?
Yeah. Above it.
Above it. What can you say about a complaint in equity in probate court? I don't handle probate. Probate court is a very unique court. It is often governed by very different rules of evidence and rules and orders than typical court proceedings. But if you have probate questions, I'm not a probate attorney. Another question with the crowd.
If someone has significant assets and is looking to diversify internationally for added security, how would you recommend they proceed to secure their wealth in various jurisdictions?
So if somebody's looking for international diversification, if they want to put some money overseas, which given the current instability in the United States, the political instability and general instability in our government with our country, it makes a lot of sense to diversify not only your money, where your money is, but where you are. And it is a reason that I do believe in getting second passports. I don't help clients get second passports directly, but I do help clients diversify where their money is. And generally, we will recommend clients start by opening a Swiss bank account. If you don't have any money outside the United States, Switzerland would be the first place that I recommend that you put some money, because in Switzerland, you get access to the world's best and most secure banks. You also get excellent, crisp Swiss customer service. You have access to a variety of different investments in stocks, bonds, traditional currencies, the Swiss franc, the euro, the Australian dollar, the US dollar, as well as various different types of cryptocurrency. Other offshore jurisdictions that we use sometimes, Liechtenstein, which is very close to Switzerland, very similar to Switzerland. Panama is another jurisdiction to consider. The Cook Islands, those are the ones that we'll typically recommend first to clients. Another jurisdiction that I think is also a very good offshore jurisdiction for holding wealth is Singapore. Regardless of where the bank account is held, we generally will register the trust that owns that bank account in the Cook Islands, sometimes in Nevis or Belize, but typically the structure is a Cook Islands trust with a Swiss bank account. Is it better to add my holdings in my children's names or in a trust? So as far as putting money in your children's name, the problem with that, number one, is that it's no longer your money. And I don't want to have a client that has to beg their children to give them money. Also, there are certain estate and gift tax issues that come up if you start giving away assets to your children. Not only are you eating up your lifetime gift exclusion when you give money to your children, which may not be an issue for too many people because of how high the gift taxes exemptions are. It's around $12 million per individual. But the other problem is there's a step up in basis that you receive when you pass the assets to the next generation at the time of your passing. So in general, I don't recommend making your children the beneficiary of your trust. I recommend you being the initial beneficiary of your trust. And then after your children, then after you pass away, your children can be the beneficiary. I saw another question from TikTok, which was, do we handle tax planning? And we do give guidance around tax planning as it relates to setting up an offshore trust. As far as advanced tax planning, we bring in outside counsel. The general rule with taxes and a Cook Islands trust is this: it is a tax neutral structure. In no ways does it increase your taxes, in no ways does it decrease your taxes. You do have to report to the IRS that you have an offshore trust. It is not going to increase your chances of being audited, provided that you properly report that you have an offshore trust. And in doing so, or as a client of ours, we will provide our clients with a detailed memorandum on how to complete their offshore reporting requirements, as well as open them up to our access, as well as provide them access to our network of offshore providers, including CPAs who can complete any reporting requirements. But if you have further tax questions, feel free to reach out as well. Is it better to add my children's? The next question is, how do you open a Swiss bank account? So in order to open a Swiss bank account as a U.S. citizen, you must work through a registered investment advisor who is licensed with the SEC and has a relationship with a bank. Generally, in order to open a Swiss bank account, you need around $1 million US. My firm, we do have relationships with certain banks and certain investment advisors where we can get accounts open in Switzerland for as little as around $500,000. And if clients have less than that, we can get an account open in the Cook Islands for around $250,000. Or if clients want to own gold, silver, or other precious metals, we can get an account opened which for as little as $50,000. So there's different thresholds. The more money you have, the more options you'll have for holding your wealth overseas. If you're interested in just doing a Swiss bank account and you have at least $1 million for that account, feel free to be in contact with my firm. We can put you in touch with an investment advisor, even if we're not setting up a trust. But why would you want to miss out on setting up a trust, especially if you're already going through the process of opening a Swiss bank account? Question from the crowd.
Suppose a family owns multiple properties and investments, and they want to secure their legal their legacy for future generations. What legal moves can they make to lock in their legacy?
So legacy planning is very intertwined with asset protection. A lot of estate planning attorneys will put together a fine plan for passing your property after you pass away, but they don't address protecting your property now while you are alive. So what you want to do is make sure that you have a integrated estate plan, one which protects your money while you're alive right now, but one which also keeps the money out of probate after you pass away. Generally, the setup that we will do for our client, it is a combination of a Cook Islands trust, and that Cook Islands trust will pour into the client's revocable living trust, their estate planning trust at the time of their passing, provided that nobody's going to intercept any assets during that transfer. What will happen is the money from the Cook Islands trust will pour into the revocable estate planning trust, and then the estate planning trust will distribute the money out to the beneficiaries. This gives our clients the ability to very easily change who the final beneficiaries are. It's easy to amend a revocable living trust. You don't have to get consent from your trustee to do so, because you're actually going to be the trustee of your own revocable living trust, while the Cook Islands trust remains consistent in that it just pours everything into your revocable living trust when you pass away. So the combination of the Cook Islands trust and the revocable living trust is going to give you the smoothest legacy plan.
And then we have another question. How do I clean my credit score? I don't have a credit card at all. Unfortunately, I'm not a credit doctor. I have no idea how to clean up your credit. Pay your bills. Legacy is my name. Very, very, very good. Trust or an LLC? Which should you use, a trust or an LLC? And the answer is it depends on the situation. If your goal is asset protection, if your goal is simply to have money which somebody cannot take away from you, there's no better solution than a trust, especially a Cook Islands or another offshore asset protection trust. An LLC can be used as an asset protection vehicle, but is not as good of a tool because it simply allows you to delay paying a creditor, as opposed to a trust, which outright gives you the ability to deny paying a creditor. And when you're negotiating with somebody, telling them, hey, I have a trust set up, I have the ability to outright not pay you ever, that is much more powerful than saying, hey, I have the ability to pay you later, to delay payment to you. Now, there are some times when an LLC is beneficial. For example, if you own a piece of real estate, it's not your primary home, you own a piece of real estate that's not your primary home, and you don't want to get sued because you own a risky asset such as a piece of real estate. Real estate is risky. People injure themselves in real estate and they will sue the owner of that real estate. So you take that risky asset, you put it inside of an LLC, and then if something goes wrong on that individual property, that liability is not going to bubble up and affect the rest of your plan. So if you want to protect a piece of real estate, it's not your primary home, you put that into an LLC, then you put that LLC into your Cook Islands trust. If it is a primary home, then generally that will go directly into your trust, because putting it into an LLC first will cause some issues in that you lose your homestead exemption, you lose your home mortgage interest deduction. It's generally best to put your home directly into the trust if your home's not already fully protected. Next question. How do you currently see Dubai for asset protection and protection from civil lawsuits?
So I have been to Dubai about 2 times in the past year. Dubai is a cool place for entrepreneurs. It is a growing industry. It is a growing city. They are trying hard to attract people who are looking to do business there. So pretty much any type of business you have there. It is also places, you may know, where there is a lot of money and a lot of capital being raised. In terms of asset protection, there is something that I am trying to break into the market more there. However, asset protection is more of a result, the need for my services is more of a result of the broken legal system that we have in the United States. It is very easy to bring a lawsuit in the United States. You can bring a case on a contingency fee, which means you pay nothing to get the lawsuit started. You may have not even thought about bringing the lawsuit on your own, but because we are so heavily advertised to in the United States, people are bringing lawsuits because they have been advertised to. Then you can also lose your case and end up not having to pay anything to the party who you sued, even though they had to spend a lot of money defending the case. It is a very plaintiff-friendly system here in the United States. Dubai is not as bad. It does not have this same issues with its legal system, so there's not as much demand coming out of coming out of Dubai for asset protection services. Not yet, but I have had quite a few people talk to me about doing it. We've certainly worked with a client from Dubai who wanted to protect their assets as well. You still in Colorado? I am in Houston, Texas right now. I will be in Colorado in about 2 days, or actually I'll be in Colorado tomorrow night, just as soon as the snowstorm is drying, is cleaning up. I have, as many of you know, I travel quite a bit throughout Florida, throughout the United States, and throughout the world. I've been to over 40 countries. I visited most offshore jurisdictions. I have relationships with trust companies, protectors, bankers all throughout the world, and I'm constantly out there meeting with my clients and meeting with the other people who we do business with, trying to negotiate better deals for my clients, so that when I talk to a prospective client, I can say, not only have I met everybody who we will be working with, but I have met people who we're not going to be working with, and I can tell you why I have assembled the best team and why I have negotiated a better deal for you than you can find anywhere else. Because let's see, what we had some more questions on here. How can I get out of child support legally? You can't get out of child support legally. I was going to make a joke, but that wouldn't be legal either. The child support is not something that you can really protect against. You can protect your overall assets from a lawsuit, but if you're looking to avoid paying taxes or paying for your children, don't give me a call. How do you currently see Dubai? We hit that one already. Let's see, jumping down here. If they're not your kids, then go get a paternity test or maternity test and prove they're not your kids, and you should be able to avoid paying child support if they're not actually your kids. Although if you started paying child support, you could get on the hook for children that are not yours. So don't pay child support until you're sure they're actually your children.
I have a question. There are many thoughts about asset protection. Is it shady?
Is asset protection shady? So first of all, is asset protection legal? The answer is yes, it is absolutely legal. Is it ethical? Is it ethical to protect what you have built for? Is it ethical to exercise to protect your health? Is it ethical to take actions to make it harder for someone to take away your wealth? Well, I'll tell you what I don't think is very ethical. I don't think it's very ethical that you can bring a lawsuit without paying any money, without having any skin in the game. I don't think it's ethical that you should be able to advertise and convince people to bring a lawsuit, which they would not otherwise be bringing. I don't think it's ethical that you can force somebody into a settlement, even when you have a completely bogus claim, because it is so expensive to litigate in the United States. Now, if I were to go out and say, hey, I'm going to start a new company, I'm going to start a cat grooming business, the first thing anybody was going to tell me is to go set up an LLC, because that's going to help to keep you protected. And then if I start accumulating a little bit of money, if I've got a few $100,000 in the bank, somebody may say, what you need to do is go form a domestic trust to keep your money protected. No one's going to call that unethical. But the minute you start talking about doing any business outside the United States, the response that people get is, oh, that seems shady, that seems wrong. And the reason, I believe, the reason that you get that pushback from people as soon as you start talking about anything offshore is because Americans are narrow-minded. The majority of Americans don't have a passport. They've never been outside the United States. And those who have been outside the United States, the majority of them have never been anywhere other than Canada or Mexico. For most of the rest of the world, or a lot of the rest of the world, where traveling internationally is very common, doing business internationally is very common. And for my more successful clients, or I guess for the people who contact me, they generally have become very successful. They generally all have at least $1 million. Some have tens of millions of dollars, and some have hundreds of millions of dollars. They have an international perspective. They're open-minded to utilizing global solutions to their problems. I don't think there's anything unethical about doing asset protection. I think it's actually very foolish not to protect yourself and think that I'm going to rely on a legal system which we know is not reliable, which we know has unpredictable verdicts, where people end up having to pay judgments for the wrong reasons, simply because the jury may not like their politics, or or the plaintiff may have fabricated a story and painted a picture of the defendant, which is not accurate. So no, I think it is very ethical to protect your family's wealth and discourage lawsuits.
What nationality are you? I was born and raised in Jacksonville, Florida. I grew up in the trees. Grew up perhaps in the Bible Belt. I'm not a particularly religious person myself. Went to school at the University of Florida Gators, undergraduate and law school, and then spent about 10 years out in Denver, Colorado, which is where I initially founded my firm before I relocated to Miami, Florida. But I'm licensed in Colorado. I'm licensed in Florida. I will work with clients from anywhere, provided that you're looking to set up an offshore trust. Who is your biggest client? I'm not going to tell you who my biggest client is, but I can tell you how big my biggest client is. The biggest client I've worked with, his net worth was around $500 million. His net worth was also a bit in crypto, and right now his net worth may be pushing close to $1 billion. But I've worked with quite a few centimillionaires. The majority of my clients have somewhere between $1 and $10 million. There are clients with a little bit less than $1 million, and we do have clients who have significantly more than $10 million, as I just mentioned. You indicated you were back in school. How is that going for you? I'm not back in school. I haven't been in school in about 15 years, and don't really have any desire to go back to school. How do I make an appointment at your office? I'm in Boca Raton. Contact my law firm through our website, BlakeHarrisLaw.com. You can also call 833-ASK-BLAKE, or even shoot me an email, Blake@BlakeHarrisLaw.com. We'll get you scheduled for a consultation. More than happy to meet you if we're in the same town, but 98% of my clients end up hiring me before we meet in person. But if you are a client and we're in the same town, I'm more than happy to enjoy meeting with my clients whenever possible. Appointment. Darn. All right. What other crowd do we have? Question do we have from the crowd?
If I'm thinking of considering Cook Islands Trust, do I have to go to the Cook Islands?
So do you have to go to the Cook Islands in order to set up a Cook Islands Trust? Do you have to go to Switzerland to open a account? The answer is absolutely not. At no point during the process do you ever have to leave your home. I've been to the Cook Islands. I've been to Switzerland. I've met with everyone who you are going to be doing business with, so you can stay home. How do I become a millionaire? Work hard, save your money, protect your money, be frugal. There's lots of opportunities to make money, I believe, in today's world, and you can do it without a doubt if one thing, you're disciplined. Lots of people come to America because it is the land of opportunity, and there's lots of things that are not great about America that I don't like about America, which I wish could be improved. But I will tell you, there's very few places in the world that give you the opportunity to become rich like you have in America. However, it will require one thing, and that's discipline. A lot of people come from other countries where they had to struggle a lot in their upbringing, and they have this hardworking mentality ingrained in them, and they go on to become very successful. Some Americans have it, a lot of Americans don't. But if you can be disciplined, if you can get yourself into a mindset, into an environment where you remain disciplined, you're going to become plenty successful. And don't look at it just from a perspective of the money. You want to make sure that you are preserving your health as well during the process. If you're becoming wealthy, but it's destroying your health, you've not actually achieved what you want to achieve. It's fine to build slowly as long as you are diligently building. It's not compromising your health. Don't give up on good relationships you have with friends and family members. Now, if somebody is down, totally down, and they're bringing you down, you need to distance yourself from that relationship. But discipline, surround yourself with the right people. I believe, and I mean this genuinely, anyone can be rich.
Do you want me to read?
Sure.
Do you do civil cases, defamation of character?
So my firm is not a litigation firm. If a client is concerned about being sued for defamation, then we will consider taking them on as a client and protecting their assets. We're not going to file a lawsuit and sue someone for defamation. That's very much not in line with my beliefs. I'm very much a believer in protecting and avoiding litigation. Now, if a client of ours gets sued, we'd be happy to make a recommendation to another attorney who can defend them in the civil case, and then we will work
we will work in conjunction with their defense attorney in helping our client to get to a settlement. But we're not plaintiff or defendant side of any filed cases. We just work in conjunction with defense counsel.
What is the limit we can start off on an offshore account?
So there is no set minimum in order to open an offshore account. I actually could get an offshore account opened for $0, but it's still going to cost you a few $1,000s a year to have that account. Generally, most of my clients have at least $1 million in net worth before it makes sense to set up a Cook Islands trust. But there's no hard set minimum. And if a client has less than that, but they are very concerned or the trust will bring them a lot of peace of mind, then we're happy to set it up for less than $1 million.
If someone is involved in a lawsuit and they fear losing their home and savings, what steps can they take to protect these assets from being seized in a legal judgment?
So someone has a home and savings and they're concerned about losing them in a lawsuit. So we're going to start off with a quick analysis. Where's the home located? How much equity is in the home? How much of that equity is exposed? Pretty much every state has a homestead protection, which allows a certain amount of equity to not be lost in a lawsuit. So let's say your state allows for $500,000 of equity to be protected in the event of bankruptcy, in the event of a lawsuit. Let's say your home is worth $1 million, but you have a $400,000 mortgage on it. That leaves only about $100,000 of equity in your home. So you can tell an opposing party, instead of taking my home, paying off my mortgage, and only getting about $100,000 of equity for yourself, not to mention that you're gonna have to spend $20,000, $30,000, $40,000 in foreclosure costs, why don't I just write you a check for $50,000 and you keep your hands off my home? In addition, you can also put your home into a trust, making it harder for someone to take the home away from you because the court can't order you to give away the home. There is a possibility that a plaintiff could go directly after the asset and the U.S. court could disregard the trust to the extent that it has jurisdiction over a asset in the U.S. And the way that we avoid that is either selling the property or mortgaging it even farther so that we've stripped out all the equity and we've completely eliminated any economic incentive for someone to go after that piece of real estate. As far as savings accounts, well, that's a little bit easier. We would simply open up a bank account under the trust in an offshore jurisdiction, most likely Switzerland. And then at that point, it's going to be extremely difficult for a plaintiff to get that asset because it's going to require them to get a judgment out of the Cook Islands, which is a very hard place for a plaintiff to succeed. It almost never happens. And when a plaintiff is met with this hurdle, and they realize what they're up against, they're going to do one of two things. In some cases, they'll just drop their case entirely. And in most cases, what they'll do is be willing to take your settlement offer. And that's the name of the game, getting to an acceptable settlement. What I give my clients when they hire my firm, it's peace of mind, but it's also the ability to negotiate. Instead of having your back up against the wall and simply being taken advantage of the first time that you get sued, you're going to be able to push back and tell a creditor, well, not so fast, because if you continue to push forward with this case, there's a good chance you're not going to end up being able to get paid whatsoever. So get yourself some settlement leverage and protect yourself with a lawsuit. Question.
Can a company terminate me if I'm a whistleblower?
Can a company terminate you if you're a whistleblower? Has anyone been following what's happened with Boeing? They apparently are willing to do things worse than terminate you. Can they legally? No. Does it happen? Yes. What should you do? You should probably get yourself an attorney before blowing the whistle. That would be my recommendation. Another question.
For Swiss citizens, which asset protection construct is easiest to set up or offers best flexibility?
So for Swiss citizens, it's a little bit different than people in other parts of the world because typically we open up a bank account in Switzerland. However, we don't want the asset in the same jurisdiction where we are concerned about litigation arising. So for a Swiss citizen, what we would do is still set up a trust in the Cook Islands, but then we'd have a bank account open in somewhere other than Switzerland, such as Panama, Singapore, maybe Liechtenstein. But what we want to do is make sure that the jurisdiction where litigation could arise, is not the same jurisdiction which controls the underlying asset.
Do you do tax planning?
We will give guidance on tax planning in terms of the Cook Islands Trust. And as I mentioned earlier in the live stream, it's a tax neutral structure, but we're happy to guide you through the tax implications of setting up a Cook Islands Trust. If a client needs further tax planning, they have a taxable estate of an individual worth more than $12 million or a married couple worth more than $24 million, then we'd be happy to refer a client to a CPA in our network who can do further tax planning.
How do I know that the foreign trustee is safe?
How do I know that the foreign trustee is safe? And this is a great question, which I get to answer several times a day. It took some time for me to get comfortable with the foreign trustees as well. They were recommended to me by attorneys who I've known for quite a while, but I still took the time to do my own due diligence. I've been to the Cook Islands many times. I've met with every single trust company there. The two trust companies that I do the majority of business with, I'm personal friends with the owners of these trust companies. These trust companies have been in business for decades, and they are managing billions of dollars in assets. We've never had any issue with the trust company doing anything other than what we wanted and what we directed the trust company to do. Actually, in my career, I've heard of only one incident where a professional trustee stole money from the client. Now, if you've got your uncle or your step mom or a friend serving as your trustee, that gets risky, and that's pretty frequent that money gets stolen from a trust. But if you're working with a professionally licensed trust company, the chances of that happening are very small. And the only time I've ever heard of it happening, and this certainly was not with a client of mine, was with a trustee out of Chicago. I've never heard of any incidents of a professional trustee, certainly not anyone that we work with, and not anyone out of the Cook Islands either, mismanaging any of the client's funds. But what you want to do is find an attorney who has a close relationship with the trust company and can pass that confidence on to you.
If an individual is concerned about potential litigation due to their profession, how could they structure their assets to mitigate risk and protect their wealth?
So if you're concerned about lawsuits because of your profession, and this is one of the more common areas we get doctors, attorneys, but also people across a variety of different industries now, engineers, investors in oil and gas, real estate, crypto investors, YouTube, social media influencers, all of them are concerned about litigation arising because of their profession. One thing that you can do in many professions is buy malpractice insurance. In general, I do recommend clients have malpractice insurance, and here's why. For one, it's generally pretty reasonable. A few $100s a year can get you a few $100,000 of protection. And the first time you get sued, they supply the attorneys. However, I don't recommend relying on insurance alone. Some claims will go beyond policy limits. Other claims are not going to be covered. There's a long list of exclusions in every single insurance policy. And your insurance agent generally is not going to go over those exclusions with you at the time that you make your initial claim, at the time you purchase the policy. However, when you go to file a claim, they may try to hide behind one of those exclusions. So generally, I recommend buying insurance. Now, if you are a high-end surgeon and it's costing you $100,000 a year for $200,000 a year protection, my advice is, you know what, step back and don't buy insurance. Let's just rely on asset protection. And for everyone who has at least or around $1 million in assets and they're concerned about being sued because it's something their profession, then my recommendation is going to be to go ahead and get yourself asset protection with an offshore asset protection trust. You move your assets into the offshore trust. You can still invest the money. You can still take distributions anytime you want. But if you are sued, you're going to be able to push back and say, hey, person suing me, you're not going to be able to get any portion of the assets. Another question.
How do you protect yourself from your mom?
How do you protect yourself from your mom? You know, it's funny. I have had a case where a client got sued by their mom, and a friend of mine is litigating another case where they got sued by their mom. It's unfortunate. Families with wealth are often. It's unfortunate, but families with wealth are often torn apart by that money. And my advice is try to have an amicable relationship with everyone in your family. You don't need to be best friends with everyone in your family. I don't think that's realistic. We as humans are designed to be different from our family members. But A family that can be supportive of each other is going to grow to be so much more wealthy than a family that is continuously fighting. But you can also protect your own assets, and once you do that, that'll eliminate any economic incentive for your mom to sue you. Now, the problem though is family lawsuits are often not money driven. Sometimes they are, but they're often not money driven. They're often driven by the desire to hurt or spite somebody, which is why I go back to the initial part of try to have an amicable relationship with everyone in your family.
Should you invest in stocks or crypto, which has less risk?
Stocks or crypto, which has less risks? Do you want to go with the baby boomer casino, or do you want to go with the millennial casino? Both of them have risk. The stock market has been around for a lot longer, and it's very much ingrained into society, and there's some confidence in that. And crypto is very much designed for the future. I don't make investment recommendations. I'm not going to be one to recommend any investment to someone. I'll share what I do. I've got a little bit of stock market investments through my retirement account, and then I do have a little bit of crypto. I stick to the blue chips of crypto, but in terms of which one is going to do better, I don't know. I will tell you what I believe can outperform stocks and outperform crypto, and that's investing in yourself, learning more, spending money to hire mentors, building your own business, getting yourself free from a job that enslaves you 9 to 5 so you can be self-employed and work 24/7.
If someone with a lot of cryptocurrency holdings is seeking to protect their assets from potential regulatory changes and cyber threats, how could they structure their holdings to minimize risks?
Okay, so the question is, how do you protect your cryptocurrency? So there's a few different strategies for protecting cryptocurrency. We're going to go through the most common suggestion that I get from people on social media, which is if you're ever asked about your crypto, you just explain that you lost in a boating accident. The problem with this strategy is you are risking putting yourself in jail. And don't get me wrong, having a lot of crypto is a great thing, but it's worth nothing if you are stuck in jail. If a court finds out that you were not honest about your assets and that you did not report that you own crypto, you could be put in jail and you could lose your crypto. There's a better option. Create an offshore trust, assign your crypto to that offshore trust, and then you can still keep that money, keep that crypto if you're sued. Once the crypto is under the offshore trust, there's a few different options. Number one, you take the crypto and you self-custody it. The trustee will hire you to be the custodian of the crypto. This is fine if the waters are calm or there's no judgment against you, nobody's trying to take your crypto away. If you are in active litigation or somebody has a judgment against you, at that time, you want a third-party custodian. You can use a private vault to hold your crypto, or what you can do is utilize one of the banks in Switzerland, which will allow you to hold your crypto. So yes, you can protect your crypto. Yes, you can have it. Yes, you can invest in crypto, and you can do it on your trust, and this can all be done legally.
Ryu says he's an attorney and he hates his job.
Okay, sounds like a lot of attorneys. The goal of most attorneys is to not be an attorney anymore. But the law practice is vast. There's lots of different ways that you could be practicing law. You could be in a courtroom right now wearing a tie and sucking up to a judge, or you could be in front of a green screen throwing boxing gloves right now. Don't be afraid. Don't be afraid to look for other ways of practicing the law. Find something that maybe is of interest to you and make a career out of that. That being said, even if it's not of interest to you, maybe you can develop an interest in it as well.
A family wishes to protect their wealth from generational wealth taxes and ensure that their heirs receive the maximum benefit. What trust structures or estate planning strategies could they employ?
Okay, so how do you preserve wealth for generations to come in terms of trust planning? So the first rule of generational wealth preservation has nothing to do with trust. It had to do with instilling the proper values, morals, discipline, and work ethic into the next generation. I'm going to say that one more time. The key to preserving generational wealth is putting the right values into the next generation. The Vanderbilt family was once one of the wealthiest families in the world. There's almost no Vanderbilts who are millionaires now. whereas the Rockefeller family, the Kennedy family has managed to pass down lots of wealth generation after generation. Both received great tax advice. Others just had different habits within the family. That's part one to the question. Part two, you then look to set up various types of asset protection trusts, various types of estate tax planning trusts. The very first one that you should consider if your net worth is at a level where you would be taxed at the time of your passing is setting up an ILIT, an irrevocable life insurance trust. You take a life insurance policy, you put it outside of your estate with an ILIT, you pass away, the payout comes in, and all those proceeds from the payout are not subject to any estate tax. So gifting assets before you pass away is the basis of an ILIT, and it's really the basis of a lot of tax planning. Other options include charitable planning. That will reduce your estate tax burden. That doesn't necessarily keep the money in the family. It does give the ability for future family members to influence how money is spent and preserved for generations to come. Question.
What's the first step to suing my dentist?
What's the first step to suing your dentist? Well, good news about America is you don't have to pay anything. There's probably a long line of attorneys who'd be happy to sue someone like a dentist who has some deep pockets. Hopefully that dentist does not have an asset protection trust. Otherwise, you're going to have trouble getting any money from them. But then you're going to need to produce some evidence that your dentist did something wrong. And like any profession, there's great dentists and there's questionable dentists. And if this dentist has legitimately caused harm, or they are doing some type of scammy practice where they're recommending surgeries and recommending work that's not actually needed, I hope you do sue them, and I hope you get a good judgment, and I hope it corrects how they are handling their practice. Find an attorney, though.
Jason asked, at the age of 25, how much should I have in my savings account?
Don't worry about it, is my short answer. At the age of 25, I knew people who were far wealthier than me and seemed far farther along. Now, almost 15 years later, we've switched places in many regards. There are going to be people who are richer than you at 25, and they're going to be dead before they're 40. There's people who are poorer than you right now, and they will live a lot longer than any of us. The question is, are you building yourself in the right directions? Do you have the correct habits to sustain a long, healthy, and wealthy life? If your bank account is bigger tomorrow than it was yesterday, you're heading on the right track. There's no certain amount of money that you should have in your account at any certain age. Are you doing the things you enjoy doing? Are you living a life that you're proud of?
A business owner anticipates a potential lawsuit against their company. What strategies could they use to safeguard personal assets and ensure the continuity of their business operations?
So a business owner is worried about their business getting sued. So here's how to protect a business. Lean and mean. Take any excess equity you have out of that business, take any excess cash you have out of that business, and put that into an offshore trust, into an account under an offshore trust. If your business has hard assets, you may want to form a separate holding company that holds those hard assets, then have your operating business lease those hard assets from the holding company. That way, if somebody tries to sue your business directly, there's no assets for someone to take. If you can eliminate the economic incentive for someone to sue you, you've pretty much eliminated any lawsuits from coming your way.
Homer asked, do I have to have my record sealed to never show if I'm part of a first offender program?
Talk to a criminal defense attorney. I have tried to stay away from criminal law matters, whether that's personally or professionally.
If a high net worth individual is considering moving their assets offshore, what factors should they consider when choosing a jurisdiction that aligns with their asset protection goals and risk tolerance?
So what factors should you consider when moving your assets overseas? The reputation of the jurisdiction where you are moving money. That's the biggest thing to consider. You'll also want to make sure that whoever is handling your money within that country is responsive, that you can communicate with them, that you're comfortable, that when you're in need to get a distribution, to get a wire transfer done quickly, that they will be on top of their game. So I would say that look for the reputation. you're not going to find a country with a better reputation for handling your money than Switzerland. There's other countries that are good, other countries which I would trust as well, but I don't believe that there is a better banking jurisdiction right now, certainly for Americans, than Switzerland. What's the question? I'll answer.
Jason asked, should I save 20% for my first house purchase or go with the first time home buyer route?
I would say talk to your real estate agent about that, or talk to a mortgage broker about that. I'm not really in a position to give advice on first-time home buyers.
I like Canada and China better than Switzerland.
You're going to be challenged to open up it's going to be challenged to open up a bank account in China. Hong Kong right now, the banking industry is collapsing quickly. I would not be putting money into China. There's a lot of people in China who are doing everything they can to figure out how to get money out of China, which includes unusual things such as flying airplanes full of cash out of China, importing fentanyl into the United States as a means of getting cash out of China, smuggling Bitcoin out of China. I would not look at China as a place that you want to put more money. It is a place people are actively trying to get money out of. And in terms of Canada, at least it's outside the United States. It does present more hurdles to litigation, but they will probably accept a U.S. court order in Canada. And it's very easy for a U.S. attorney to find a Canadian attorney to go and litigate up there. You're not really giving yourself much in forms of asset protection if you're going with a Canadian bank.
Can you explain how the Cook Islands Trust works in the simplest of terms?
Can I explain how a Cook Islands Trust works in the simplest of terms? Absolutely, and I can do it while I'm juggling as well. I was trying to think about how to explain how a Cook Islands Trust works and how I would do it with the least amount of words possible. If I could only use 2 words, I'd go with asset protection. I could use 5 words. It protects your money from lawsuits. That's 6 words. In terms of a trust, think about it like having a friend, somebody who you trust deeply. You go and you give your boat to this friend. Then this friend ends up letting you use the boat anytime you want. You can go ride around the boat. You can fill up with a bunch of friends, take some great photos for the gram. But as soon as you get sued, they're not going to be able to take a boat away from your friend. The same is true with a trust. You put your money into the hands of the trustee. Anytime you want a distribution, they'll send you money. But if you end up getting sued, they're not going to be able to take money away from your trustee.
If you're an entrepreneur and want to protect your assets from potential business risks, what should you do?
If you're an entrepreneur and you want to protect your assets from business risk, well, there's a few things you should do. Number one, you should have properly drafted contracts. Make sure that you have an attorney review all of your contracts. An ounce of prevention is worth a pound of the cure. And this is certainly true when it comes to asset protection planning. Number 2, incorporate ADR, that is alternative dispute resolution, into every single contract that you have with a prospective client. It just makes sense that any legal battle that comes your way has to go through an outside party where you settle your case without involving the court system. The courts can be unpredictable for plaintiff, unpredictable for defendant. ADR helps to avoid that. And third is protect your assets with an offshore trust. When the money's in the hands of a trustee who's not going to hand over the assets, then you are going to be in a much better position to negotiate. Toss it here. What we have here, but the globe. So wanted to do this for quite a while. So here we are in the United States, right here. Let's say that you're right in the heartland. You're living in Kansas. You're living in Kansas. You've started a business a few years ago. You've worked hard. You've been disciplined. You've saved, but America is the lawsuit lottery, and you want to make sure that your money is yours for your family, and that you can use it for your retirement, and that nobody's going to take it away from you in a lawsuit, and that if you get sued, you're going to be able to negotiate and sleep at night and continue to focus on growing and running your business. So what do? You go down to the Cook Islands. Well, you don't have to actually go down to the Cook Islands, but all the way down here in the South Pacific, there is the Cook Islands, and then from the Cook Islands, the trustee sends an email over to Switzerland all the way up here, to open a bank account. You in the United States, wire your money to the bank account in Switzerland. Anytime you want a distribution, you send an email to the trust company in the Cook Islands. The Cook Islands will confirm that you are acting by your own free will. You're not acting under duress. A court has not ordered you to request a distribution. Once they do that, once they confirm you're acting by your own free will, they'll send a message back to your bank in Switzerland, and then the Swiss banker will wire money back into your account. So the money's there for your enjoyment, but you don't have to worry about losing it due to a lawsuit.
Jason asks, can you live in the USA and work in Canada?
Can you live in the USA and work in Canada? I think that's pretty common. I think quite a few people live in the US and commute to Canada every single day. And I think the same is true on both borders going back and forth. I don't see why you wouldn't be able to do that. Not sure why you'd want to do that, but I don't see why you'd be able to do that. If you want to live in Canada, where it's probably cheaper, and work in the United States where you can make more money, that makes more sense to me. But I don't believe there's any issues with living in one country and working in another country.
Do you have any predictions for the future of cryptocurrencies and blockchain technology?
So what I do not have any prediction for is the price of Bitcoin. I've been burned on that one before. Nobody knows exactly what's going to happen to the price of Bitcoin. With a stock, you might have some insider information, be able to say, oh, I know this stock is going to boom or bust. But anyone who tells you they know what Bitcoin is going to do, they know what the crypto market is going to do, certainly Bitcoin, the biggest of the crypto, so I get very skeptical of. There's the halving coming up soon, which many people speculate is going to cause a downward push onto Bitcoin. Where do I see the overall crypto market going in terms of adoption? I think it's going to continue to grow. I think it's going to take a panic in the world to be the real push for crypto and Bitcoin. I think we're going to see some smaller countries in the world, perhaps some South American countries, that face hyperinflation. And as the people there give up their currency because it becomes worthless quickly, they're going to flock to Bitcoin to hold their wealth. They will have easier access to Bitcoin than they will other types of money getting to the US dollar. And once that happens, once there's a wave of these countries accepting Bitcoin, it is going to become the new normal. And I think Bitcoin is going to become pretty much the world reserve currency at some point. That being said, I think the traditional currencies are going to stay around for quite a while, and the two will coexist for the remainder of our life.
What are the financial habits of wealthy individuals?
What are the financial habits of wealthy individuals? I would say that my wealthy clients, here are a few things that I notice with them. One is they tend to focus on one business. This idea of having multiple sources of revenue is not really true. Once they get to a certain level of wealth, yes, they may start buying a little bit of additional real estate, but I don't see them trying to run several different types of companies and being an industry expert in several different types of industry. So they tend to be pretty focused. They tend to, most of them are married. A lot of those marriages are seeing some questionable futures to them, but most of them are married. Most of my clients are between the ages of about 30 and 60. I find that they are generally respectful and nice to work with. And I find that they tend to be quite responsive too. We ask for information, they tend to send us the information back. They tend to be open-minded to learning new things. This concept of the Cook Islands Trust is something a lot of them had not heard of a few months before they contacted my law firm, but they're open to learning about new things, learning about new opportunities, and they're very much appreciative of finding somebody who's an expert in a field and then relying on them, whether it's another attorney who I put them in touch with, whether it's my own guidance and advice that I'm giving them, whether it's a CPA or an investment advisor that we are connecting them with. They tend to be pretty good about relying on the professionals they hire.
Okay. Do you think AI will replace offshore protection lawyers in the future?
So AI, I'm going to call something other than AI for the purpose of answering this question, because I think it's going to illustrate the answer better, which is technology. And instead of addressing it just for the offshore industry, I'm going to address it as a legal professional, as an attorney as a whole. The question is technology going to make the attorney's job obsolete? And the answer is, well, it's been doing that for decades. The legal practice that a attorney entering today is very different than the legal practice that an attorney 50 years ago would have been entering. And you would have been able to tell an attorney a long time ago, oh, with the invention of this internet, there's not going to be a need for any attorneys anymore because all that information that they have in their private vault is going to be available to the public. All the templates that they have for drawing up a will or a power of attorney is going to be available to the public. Well, guess what? The legal field evolves as well. I'm not hired because we have the best trust document. Do I believe we have the best trust document? Absolutely. I don't think that there's any other provider, any other attorney who provides a better trust than what I offer. But that's not the reason clients choose to work with us. They choose to work with us, well, for one, because of our results. We've never had a single penny taken out of any of our clients' trust, forced out of any of our clients' trust, but also because of our relationships we have with offshore providers and trust companies and banks. And it is that relationship and the confidence that I have in the people we work with internationally that I'm able to hand over to a client. And can AI do that? Not really. I don't think AI can really build a relationship the way that a human being can. Will AI change the legal profession? Will AI change the offshore business? Of course. But is it going to eliminate the need for me? I don't think so.
What do I do about a stalker in another state that keeps harassing and threatening me?
What do you do about a stalker? Call the police, gather evidence and call the police.
If you're married, should you have a separate or joint bank account?
If you're married, should you have a separate or joint bank account? Nothing says, let's make it easy to lose all of our money like sharing a bank account. I understand for simplicity, putting some money to a joint account may make sense. However, as soon as you do that, that joint account becomes the target, becomes a potential asset that a creditor of either spouse can take. Generally, the liability of one spouse, the debt of one spouse, is not the responsibility of the other spouse. So by keeping separate bank accounts, you can keep your assets better protected from creditors of your spouse. So generally, I recommend keeping separate bank accounts. If you are going to have a joint bank account, I understand that it is simpler for a lot of purposes to have a joint bank account. Keep that account thinly capitalized.
Two different questions I'm going to turn into one. Do you do immigration law and wrongful termination law?
I do not do immigration law, but I do have a friend who does immigration law. Feel free to send me an email. I'm happy to make the introduction there. And as far as employment law is considered, we don't handle employment law, but we deal with a lot of employers who are being sued by disgruntled former employees, and we can help protect their assets so that they don't have to pay out some of these unreasonable judgments that some of them are getting hit with. And then we would also help you find a employment litigation attorney to help defend. And we'd work in conjunction with your employment litigation defense counsel.
Prenuptial, yes or no?
Prenuptial. So the upside of a prenuptial is it gets both parties to have a meeting of the minds in terms of how assets are divided in the event of divorce. That's the good part about a prenup. And for that reason, I think it is a beneficial tool. However, a prenup also is going to upset your future spouse. And if you want to avoid upsetting your future spouse, I understand, in which case I say go with setting up an offshore trust. The other reason I recommend the offshore trust as opposed to a prenup is prenups are frequently disregarded by judges, whereas an offshore trust cannot be disregarded by a U.S. court.
Someone's pitching you a movie idea where can you do a series where asset protection saves the main character in a movie like Wolf of Wall Street?
Well, do you even need to pitch a movie? I mean, this is real life what I do. I would love to be in a movie where I do some cool things and show people how asset protection can really save their life. It would be something along the lines of that a person gets targeted by a lawsuit, by a frivolous lawsuit with a money-hungry plaintiff that is fabricating lies and making things up to try to win the case. And the defendant who's worked hard their life has a family to support, and they need that money to ensure that their children can go to school, and to ensure that they can take care of their elderly mother. And this doesn't even have to be a movie script. This is the real life things that I'm dealing with every single day.
They're clarifying that you should do it as a TikTok series.
I should do it as a TikTok series. I will run that by my marketing team. I'm actually having lunch today with another movie producer, and I will suggest it to him. But I do appreciate the support of this and the suggestion.
Okay. Minimum dollar amount where it's beneficial to draft OST.
Offshore trust. You're looking at about $1 million. Pretty simple answer there.
Is an offshore trust irrevocable?
Is an offshore trust irrevocable? Generally, yes. However, don't let that term scare you away. The way that we draft our offshore trust, the trust can still be amended. You can still add and remove property from the trust. You can direct how the money is invested, and the trust can still be dissolved later. The term irrevocable does not mean inflexible. It's still a very flexible tool. Clients don't lose any real control over their assets. They still have access to them as well. However, we do have to call it irrevocable. Otherwise, a U.S. court is going to order you to revoke the trust and pay your creditors.
Will you do a newsletter?
Will I do a newsletter? I do a newsletter already. If you'd like to join my newsletter, shoot me an email, blake@blakeharrislaw.com. Happy to join, send you our newsletter. It goes out about once a quarter, talk about different press highlights that have featured myself or my firm that quarter, as well as top social media performance for that quarter, and whatever the current subject is. We just sent out a newsletter yesterday talking about protecting crypto, because crypto is cool right now. The next one we have scheduled is talking about divorce, because when the economy is doing well, that seems to be of interest to people as well.
What if the country where you have your trust gets into financial problems?
So the Cook Islands is one of the most stable countries in the world. There's nobody there who's really super rich. There's nobody there who's really very poor. It's a very level playing field of the country. It is very well regulated. It is very safe. However, we do have the ability to change the location of the trust. We can move your trustee from the Cook Islands to Nevis or Belize or Liechtenstein or Seychelles or another jurisdiction if there is ever the need.
What's your favorite country you've traveled to?
So what's my favorite country I've traveled to? So the answer to that question is it depends on certain factors. I mean, there's nowhere in the world that I've been that's more beautiful than Bora Bora in French Polynesia. However, it is not an easy place to get to. You have to fly to the South Pacific, start in Tahiti, and then from there fly over to Bora Bora. I love Nevis in the Caribbean. I go there a few times each year. I take my children every summer there. It is a very laid back, quiet, safe place with good food, beautiful, calm waters. I love to swim. I love to swim in the ocean, and Nevis is one of my favorite places for that reason. I also love Thailand. I like to do a little bit of Muay Thai sometimes, and with that, Thailand is a great place to train as well. I also like to do business, and for that reason, as an American, the United States is a great place to do business, and so is Dubai. Dubai is a very popular place for business as well. So lots of different reasons to have favorite countries. I love the remoteness and tranquility of being in a tiny island country. I think the Cook Islands are very beautiful. Rarotonga, Aitutaki, one of the most beautiful places on earth. The internet runs a little bit slower there, and somebody who's kind of addicted to high-speed internet, it's not a place where I want to spend a long time, but I do love going to visit every single year.
Jay has a comment that Alaska is out of this world and it's in the US.
Alaska is my favorite place that I have been in the United States. It's beautiful, and have only been one time many years ago, but I would love to go back there at some point. Hawaii is pretty much the only state I haven't been to. Antarctica is the only continent I haven't been to.
Can you share a special memory or moment you've had with your child that stands out to you?
So every moment I have with my children is special, especially being a dad who travels a lot. I have the benefit that when I'm with my children, it's a very special time. And being a business owner, I have the flexibility to take time off when I'm with them and really focus with them. But I will tell the story of one time that one of my children made me very proud. We had the parent teacher conference and they went through all the normal things about how the child is doing well in math and English and reading. And my children are far smarter than me, straight A students, which I never was, and maybe some areas that could be improved upon. But after going through the main portion of the parent teacher conference, she goes, I want you to know that your daughter makes sure that no child is ever left out of a group discussion, that no child is being left out. And I said to my daughter, I was so proud to hear this. And she goes, I may be shy, and she's a little bit more introverted, but I'm going to make sure that nobody's being left out. And that made me very proud. That was a great moment as a parent.
Can you explain how a Nevis LLC works and how it's set up and all of that thing?
So a Nevis LLC is a common structure that is included under an offshore trust. A very common structure to set up a Cook Islands trust, and under that Cook Islands trust, have a Nevis LLC. I don't always recommend adding the Nevis LLC, and I'm going to talk about why I don't recommend adding it first, and then I'll talk about the benefits of it. I don't recommend adding a Nevis LLC. Number one, it's going to increase the cost of the setup of your plan by about 20–30%. Number two, it makes the structure more complex. You've got more people to deal with. It's a little bit more cumbersome to set up a Cook Islands Trust and a Nevis LLC than just the Cook Islands Trust. It also increases the tax reporting requirements. The biggest hesitation I have with the Nevis LLC is it does not increase protection. Someone says to me, well, that's two structures someone has to appear as opposed to one. My response is, well, if you're going to do that, why don't you do 10 LLCs under the trust? The reality is the trust itself is going to give you all the protection you need, provided that you properly designed and structured your trust. So those are the reasons that I'm hesitant to recommend a Nevis LLC. The majority of my clients do not utilize a Nevis LLC under their trust. Now, there are some circumstances where I do recommend a Nevis LLC. Number one, if a client insists on being the signer on their bank account, the trust will own the Nevis LLC, but the manager of the LLC can be the client, and that will give the client the peace of mind knowing that money going in or out of their bank account is only going to occur by their own signature. This is fine in litigation. If litigation arises, they would have the client file the LLC, and then another agent and then another manager would step in and manage that LLC, Nevis LLC. Another time that we use a Nevis LLC is if we're doing some equity stripping strategy. The Nevis LLC may place a lien on some domestic real estate, and those proceeds would be put into an offshore account, or if we have to protect a retirement account. In order to protect a retirement account, transfer your assets into a self-directed IRA, transfer all your retirement into a self-directed IRA, then have that self-directed IRA owned by your Nevis LLC, and that can make it much harder to get your retirement account if your retirement account already does not have enough state level protection. With the Nevis LLC owning your IRA, that Nevis LLC absolutely does not go into your trust, because doing so would cause that IRA to be seen as completely distributed from has a complete distribution. There'll be harsh tax penalties. So generally, we don't add the Nevis LLC, but there are some circumstances, and we'll guide you through the proper solution if you are in contact with my law firm.
Last question.
Sure.
Okay. Delaware LLC or Nevada LLC, pros and cons.
Delaware or Nevada, I'm going to actually go with wild card and go with Wyoming LLC. If you're looking to form an LLC, there are several considerations. The first one is, what is it owning? If it is owning real estate in Delaware, I'd go with the Delaware LLC. And the same is true for Nevada. If you're owning real estate in Nevada, I'd go with the Nevada LLC. The court is going to apply the law of the jurisdiction where the property is located, regardless of where you register the LLC. So it only makes sense to register an LLC where that property is located. Now, if you have an asset that is not tied to one jurisdiction, like a piece of real estate, then I go with Wyoming. Wyoming is a simple state to set up an LLC. And then with that, you also get charging order protection for single member entities, which you get in Delaware and Nevada as well. It also is a place where you can move that LLC into the trust. Any domestic LLC can be put into a trust. Generally, I don't even recommend setting up a domestic LLC unless you have real estate to own. But if it's just cash that you have to own, move that cash into an offshore bank account under the trust. And there's really no need for any LLC under that structure. Hope you've enjoyed the live. Feel free to get in contact. Website's Blake Harris Law. I'm Blake. Is BlakeHarrisLaw.com. I'm Blake Harris Law on all social medias, from TikTok, YouTube, Instagram, X, and Facebook. It's your money. Act like it. Protect it. All right, so let's turn that one off. And now, thank you, Tommy Time. And now, all right, Instagram and Instagram is asking.